it just to get WCW talent to New Japan, or is it also to get New Japan talent to WCW?
Well, the WCW talent going to New Japan was the deal I'm talking about. Then as our relationship grew, as this trust started happening, my mandate from Eric Bischoff was treat them like they treat us, and that's what we did. And when a relationship grew, Masa Saito says, hey, we want you to use our talent, our tap guys, give him exposure in America, right? Which will make him bigger than life back home in Japan. So here comes, Kensuke, Masahiro Chono, Great Muta, Jushin Thunder Liger, Kanemoto, Otani, and their top star came, but none of them spoke English. They can't cut a promo. So Hulk Hogan and actually Jimmy Hart, the one who suggested I become on camera talent and be the manager for them. So that's how I got to be on front of the camera talent.
When you're brokering a deal, though, is there creative discussed? Is it, okay, we want our guys to look good, or is just assumed that if you're taking a New Japan talent, you're not going to bury him on U.S. television? But is that discussed in the negotiations?
No, not at all. What was really interesting was that we trusted Masa so much that they were going to take our top star like Sting, Ric Flair, those like our top guys goes over there, and Masa takes care of our boys because he grew up in AWA, and so he knew, and in Florida Championship Wrestling, so he knew how to take care of guys and keep our guys happy, and none of those things, who goes up or down, was never discussed, and vice versa. They trusted Chono and Muta, their top guys. We did the World War III first, which is New Japan versus WCW, and that went over really well. Then I started managing Chono, and a creation of, they wanted to get a rub off when the NWO blew up. Idea was to create NWO Japan. So they backstabbed me and storyline, and it created Masa, or actually Chono and Great Muta became the Hall and Nash of NWO Japan.
Right.
And they started using many of our WCW talent over there as part of NWO Japan, like Scott Norton, Fake Sting, Jeff Farmer, and of course Hiro Saito and Tenzan, that created, and they started their version of NWO Japan in trying to take over New Japan. And just to let you know how big that angle was for New Japan, they sold $8 million worth of NWO t-shirt in Japan in 1998. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
$8 million 1 year.
I'm in Jersey. I used to work on the boardwalk when I was in college while I was wrestling. Every third shirt was either a WCW, a WWE, an ECW. It was such a hot time for wrestling at that time.
Oh, I think it was the best of the time. I think it was the best time, and certainly in our history, more people was watching pro wrestling. I think I heard this right. At one point, there was more people on Monday night watching, wrestling, pro wrestling, than Monday Night Football. It was insane. People will come to Japanese venue and buy 2 dozen a t-shirt and leave. They were not wrestling fans. They just wanted the NWO t-shirt. It became almost cultish. It was that much over.
You're a businessman. You're the boss's friend. When you go into a locker room, is there any any heat towards you? Does Eric pull you aside and say, "Listen, this is how we do things in the locker room"? Like, how's your acclimation to the locker room?
You know, my perspective, I had no problem with anybody, right? Everybody knew Eric was my friend, but at the same time, worst thing I could do was, I think people, likely, I'm sure they watched the P's and Q's, what they said to me, knowing that I may say, but that's the worst thing I could do, right? Be a stooge and go to Eric and say, hey, so and so is doing this and that. Um, I only went to Eric twice about an issue that may affect him personally, but other than that, I um, I had no issue, and my job was very simple: keeping the Japanese. They were paying us about $500,000 a year or more, every year, and so keeping them happy was my job. And of course, I got to manage their young boy at the time, like Yuji Nagata and Ultimo Dragon, came in with the luchadors. So, I mean, I was busy doing my own thing, and I kind of stayed in my world, and I got along, I got along with everybody.
What was the schedule like for you back then?
Well, I was fortunate. I only had to do TV, so, but then TV got to be Monday night, you know, Thursday, Thunder,
Saturday
Wednesday we
taping.
used to do it. We used to do
Yeah.
TV taping, and I'm telling you, man, when we used to do those worldwide TV taping, which was another one of our television show that we had back then. We go to and brilliantly when we started doing those taping at Disney and Universal Studio, they were great. Every 3 months we go down there and spend 10 days, bring our family. We get a pass so we can cut in front of lines. Our kids were loving it. My kid talks about it to this day. I mean, they'll never have that kind of experience. We were, we just have to make a couple phone calls. And we were having dinner at Cinderella's Castle after the park was closed. Stuff like that. So it was, it was great. It was a great experience.
What do you think of the actual wrestling business? Because I mean, obviously it wasn't your dream to ever be in wrestling. I mean, were you a
No.
fan? Did you enjoy the actual wrestling business
Yeah.
when you were in it?
Well, I didn't know anything about it, right? I mean, the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, but wrestling, I lived in Iowa, 100 miles south of Minneapolis, so I was an AWA guy,
Mhm.
Um, uh, you know, uh, everybody there, I was kind of starstruck when it first came. Eric would promote shows locally, and he came to Mason City. I had to bail a couple of people, wrestler out of jail. Um, but other than that, uh,
You have to bail out of
ours,
jail, Sonny.
I got a few stories.
Yeah.
I mean, I just happen to know the chief of police and mayor and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
try to help these guys out of jail. But you know, um, I'm even to this day, I am amazed at what professional wrestling does because it's a live stunt, right? And back then, when it was kayfabe, uh, you know, wrestler didn't lose, and they certainly didn't lose bar fights. You know what I mean? I was just telling a story a couple of days ago. They would, they're not going to lose the fight. They'll dig out your eyeballs, and you know, because that's their livelihood. They're the tough guys, and they're not. That it's going to take 10 guys to beat up one wrestler. I can tell you. We're talking about Meng and the guys like that, and yeah, they're legit, seriously legit tough guys.